Hello and welcome back to the Next Step Help YouTube channel, where we help young men take the next steps to achieving their dream life. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about some of the principles that you can use to learn things better, and it's going to be going through some of the tips in this book, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. We're going to have a link in the description to where you can pick this book up on Amazon if you want the paperback copy, or you can find a PDF online somewhere else. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. So the first thing that you need to actually want to learn something is the desire. You need the desire to learn it in order for you to be motivated and disciplined to do what you need to do in order to learn this thing. In this book, it talks about how you need to build the desire to improve your people skills. And to do this, you should repeat a phrase or a mantra or even the goal that you want to achieve, which will only come through you learning and growing through this process. In this book, the phrase that it suggests that you repeat to yourself to build this desire is, "My happiness, my popularity, and my sense of self-worth depend to no small extent on my ability with dealing with people." So what you should do is you should write out a small sentence that provides the reason for your desire to learn whatever it is you want to learn. This book talks about how you need to go over stuff multiple times. It talks about the first time you go through some material, it's to understand the basic understanding. It's to know where things are in relation to each other and start gaining some insight into what the thing's actually talking about. As soon as you finish that, as soon as you've gone through the material once, you should go straight back to the start and go through it again. This will provide a deeper understanding for you to actually start piecing together some of the things that you've just learned. The next tip for you to learn something is you need to start with an intention. As you're going through and learning this material, you need to have the intention in your mind. You need to stop frequently and ask yourself, okay, so how can I use this in my life? What is the relevance of this to me? And in this specific book, it talks about actions that you can do. So if you're at a restaurant, you should compliment the food that's been served to you if it's really good, to give that little bit of appreciation back to the chefs, which will make them work even harder next time. But this doesn't specifically have to be with appreciation. It can be with anything. You can think about, okay, so what's the significance of this point that I've just learned? How does it relate to my understanding? How can I implement it in my life to grow even further? The next thing that you should do is you should go through with a highlighter or a pen and make notes on the most significant things that you read or you learn. This is really important as it highlights the main points that you want to understand and you want to learn. And it's especially significant for when you come back and review the thing later on. The next step actually builds on the last point. It's the point of reviewing. So you need to keep going through this material regularly and often to combat the forgetting curve. So we forget stuff really quickly, and you need to review stuff in order to remember it and to stop it forgetting. The more often you do this on the forgetting curve, the longer it will take for you to forget it in the next time. So the more often you do it, the longer these principles will stay with you and you'll have a really good understanding. But you need to review it. Coming on from that last point is you need to apply what you learn in every single situation you can. The more you do this, the more familiar it's going to feel and the better you're going to get with the certain skill you're trying to learn. So building on the point I gave earlier of appreciation, you should try and give appreciation as often as possible. So each person you see, maybe you give them a nice compliment when they've done something. Maybe you appreciate them in a certain way, just to be nice. The more often you do this, the more familiar it's going to feel and the deeper your understanding and actual experience with the practice is going to get. This point is a mini point and it builds on the point of application last time. It says you need to build an incentive. You need to put something in your life that will actually make you apply these principles and have a negative consequence if you don't. For example, if you're revising for your GCSEs, the incentive is to get good GCSEs. You're going to have an exam. There's a deadline that's coming and you need to be ready to answer those GCSE questions in that GCSE period. This is the incentive. There's a deadline coming and you want to achieve the best that you can. Therefore, that's the incentive for you to do the work, for you to put in the hours learning the material that you need to learn. However, if you're not doing your exams, you need to build a different incentive. The way that's suggested in this book is that you pay one of your friends each time you violate a principle. So each time you violate a principle that's suggested in this book, you have to pay your mate, £1, £5, £10, something along those lines, and they can call you out on it. And because money is quite a driving factor for quite a lot of people, you're going to be motivated and incentivized not to break any of these practices and therefore develop your learning through experience of you actually putting this into practice. This next point is on reflection. Now, this doesn't have to be specific to learning, but it can be very helpful to do it. In this book, it suggests a couple of questions that can help you evaluate how useful your learning has been, whether you need to develop some of it or whether you need to change some of your understanding of certain principles. These questions are, what mistakes did I make? So this could be with a specific topic in mind. Maybe you got an exam question wrong and you're not quite sure why. So you go back over it and you learn it. You relearn what you need to learn in order to improve that subject. Maybe you forgot to be aware of someone else's wants and you just expressed your wants and you didn't get the behaviour that they wanted. From here you need to reflect, oh, this is what I did, so how can I improve? Some of the other questions are, what did I do right this week? And what could I have done to improve my performance? And finally, what lessons can I learn from this experience? This is a really helpful practice, but you must implement it weekly. You must have a weekly reflections in order for you to actually get the growth that you want and learn the things that you really want to learn at the level you want to learn them. We don't want a basic understanding, we want a really in-depth understanding, and reflection is one of the best ways to do this. It'll really good because it will highlight where your understanding is and where it isn't, and from there you can go back and relearn the things to develop that whole understanding, to have holistic knowledge of the topic or the subject that you want to learn. This next one is recording your success. You must make a log of all of your positive outcomes that have happened from this learning. This is a really great way to motivate you to continue to learn as you go onwards throughout this process. The final point is a really good way to actually test and even to develop your learning. It's to ask yourself the question, okay, so how would I explain this to a 5-year-old? Most people nowadays only learn through rote memorization. They understand the words that need to be said in the correct order in order for someone to think that you understand what you're talking about. The real way to understand something is to break it down into your own little concepts in order for you to explain it to someone else without the fancy mumbo jumbo that we all learn nowadays. If you can do this, you should be able to break a complex topic down into simple enough blocks that you could explain it to a 5-year-old. Yes, you wouldn't use the proper things. So explaining physics, you might talk about atoms as building blocks, pieces of Lego that build the world up, and they're really, really small. And a 5-year-old would understand that, as opposed to you talking about electrons and neutrons and protons, which they wouldn't understand. So this is a really good way to understand that you actually know what you're talking about, as opposed to just the words that you're meant to say. You don't actually need to go and find a 5-year-old to do this. You can just think to yourself, okay, so what would I do in order to explain this to a 5-year-old? You can actually find someone else to do this who isn't a 5-year-old. You just need to be able to explain it in such a way that you can teach them. This teaching is also a good point of reflection. So you teach them what you do know and it highlights some of the points which you don't know. And they can ask you questions, and if you don't know, you need to go back and relearn the topic through the principles that I touched on earlier in this video. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you've got anything you want to talk about learning in the comments, please just check it out. We will respond to all your comments and we'll read all of them. Please check us out on nextstephelp.net if you want affordable one-to-one coaching from either myself or Sam. Thank you very much for watching and much love.